In North America, there is a watery land where nature's forces can still erupt with primeval violence. When their fury is unleashed, life here can be terrifying. Almost hell on earth. Yet this land, where hurricane and fire wreak havoc, is also a wilderness of peace and a haven for many animals. It's a flat world of water and long sawgrass. The Native Americans of the Everglades wilderness call it Paheoki, grassy waters. Most of the Everglades is an immense shallow river, 100 kilometers wide and 200 from top to bottom, creeping at a mere 20 centimeters every hour. It has only two real seasons, wet and dry, and this is the wet season. Clumps of trees form green islands in the expanse of water. They ring small waterholes dug not by natural forces but by alligators, and the waterholes are vital in time of drought. It's a land with an extraordinary mixture of habitats. Tropical mangrove swamps lie close to temperate pine and cypress forests. These stand in swampy water, and there are hidden alligator holes here too. The Everglades lies in southern Florida and covers almost 9,000 square kilometers. Immense and flat, its highest point is less than 6 meters above sea level. Pine lands lie to the east, mangroves to the south, cypress forests to the west. And where once endless pine forests grew, there's now the extended metropolis of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach. This is North America's only subtropical wetland. Every year, the ebb and flow of water decides the fate of each animal and plant in it. The greatest diversity is found at the waterholes, key to the survival of much Everglades wildlife. And this animal, the alligator, king of the Everglades, maintains these waterholes by scraping out mud and debris with tail and claw. A cold-blooded primeval monster crawls from the swamp to warm up its body for the day's action. The Everglades swamps, though, are not primeval. They're only about 7,000 years old. This alligator is not basking. She's on guard. Under the warm earth, her eggs are hatching, and she's waiting to help out. This powerful reptile shows an amazing capacity for gentleness. The teeth that hold fragile young so tenderly can crush a turtle's back like an eggshell. Just 20 centimeters long, only minutes old, and entering a dangerous world. But for the next 2 years at least, it'll have its mother to keep an eye on it. Gar, one of the largest of Everglades fish, a spotted, trap-jawed predator, a prowling leopard of the waters. Many fish come to the alligator holes, the densely crowded dining halls of the Everglades. the predatory fish play a deadly game, waiting to pounce on small fish when they have to leave the safety of one clump of weeds for another. In spite of the ever-present danger from alligators, the waterhole is still the best place for everyone to feed. Even the small fish, for whom this really can be a hellhole. Everyone has a different hunting technique. The largemouth bass is a smash and grab merchant. The gar stalks. Its slender mouth probes the weeds like a long stick, and its spotted chainmail coat blends well with the murk. Of the many water birds found here, the ahinga is perhaps the oddest. A primitive fishing bird, it has no oils with which to waterproof its feathers. It returns soaked to the skin from fishing trips. The sun has to help out, to dry it off and warm it so that it doesn't catch a chill. It submerges completely to fish. A small, lithe hunter with a fan of tail feathers that probably gave it the alternative name, water turkey. Because it has no waterproofing oils, it's not buoyant, and so underwater it behaves more like a fish than a bird. It has to harpoon big fish with its sharp beak before it can swallow them, head first. Barely higher than the grasslands are the pinelands of the Everglades. But a mere metre makes all the difference. For most of the year, these pinelands are above water, and the vegetation is quite different. Mammals that cannot live in the true wetlands graze and hunt these open forests. White-tailed deer, and an animal that eats them. This is almost the Florida panther's last refuge, because most of the pinelands have been taken over by big cities. These cubs were born just 10 days ago. The panthers are now clawing their way back from the edge of extinction, greatly helped by human management and protection. In the tidal ebb and flow of the mangrove forests lives an animal that's also rare and still declining each year. Fat, slow-moving West Indian manatees are gentle, passive creatures, closely related to the elephant. Because they swim just below the surface, it's easy for boat propellers to harm or kill them. The Everglades wet season can be a time when all hell's let loose. It's when the hurricanes blow. A hellish cauldron of cloud and wind, hundreds of kilometers across. In the face of winds that blow at 200 kilometers an hour, everything can collapse like a pack of cards. In 1992, Hurricane Andrew snapped pines like toothpicks. It was too much for some of the Everglades forests, struggling to recover from several years of persistent drought. They simply died. Yet even such devastation has minor benefits. Never slow to come forward in the face of death, vultures soon arrive for the hurricane's leftovers. An alligator killed perhaps by the tempest, something which rarely happens. The refuse collectors of the wild get stuck in. Astonishingly, as soon as the hurricane has blown away, the wildlife reappears, apparently unharmed and with all limbs intact. Quite where the animals hide away remains one of the mysteries of this still little understood wilderness. A rare bird of prey, out looking for food. As the water level drops, aquatic animals become more exposed. These snails, for instance, they must come to the surface to breed, which makes them doubly vulnerable. And this is when the snail kite has a feast. It prefers to eat apple snails, and there are more than enough of them in the Everglades to provide such a specialist with a constant supply. The snails are about the size and colour of small green apples. The kite is a practised gourmet, skillfully winkling the snails from their shell with its specialised hooked beak. just an empty vessel or a gift from the gods? A small crayfish can pinch out the tiniest leftovers. Unlike the kite, it's not a fussy gourmet. It'll eat just about anything. But a food queue has quickly formed. This delicacy is worth a punch-up. The last in line is the largest, and he has no scruples about jumping the queue or stealing. The thief retires to its mud burrow, and the loser can only wave a frustrated claw. Alligators, which will also eat almost anything, live throughout the Everglades. When water levels are high, they move everywhere freely. Here is a world of dangling Spanish moss, where epiphytes cling to branches and take their food and moisture from the air. Among the trees of Big Cypress Swamp, there are also deep pools maintained by these reptiles. Alligator holes make this steamy swamp a fishing bird's paradise. A paddle-footed hunter and underwater athlete, the cormorant swims as fast as the fish it chases. When the dry weather worsens, pools like this will save the lives of many birds. Wading birds home in on these deep pools during the dry season. They're here because of the concentration of fish. The birds will soon start to nest. Their nesting season and the falling water levels are closely tied. They will only breed if the water goes down, forcing the fish to congregate in the shallows. April, and it's hotting up. The strong sunlight speeds up plant growth in the water. Bladderwort are free-floating carnivorous plants, which have found a way of feeding without roots in this place that has very few nutrients. Each plant is armed with specialized feeding organs, tiny hollow bladders waiting to suck in the unsuspecting. The bladders have an opening surrounded by sensitive bristles. The moment any passing tiny animal touches these, the bladders react instantly by dilating and creating irresistible suction, sometimes reacting to false alarms. But eventually, something edible, like a red water mite, will swim by. The red water mite is now on death row, condemned to execution by digestive enzymes, which have already started their work. This is an ideal, if to us a gruesome way, for the rootless bladderwort to get its nutrients. As the dry season advances, more and more water vanishes under the heat of the sun. The alligator holes are now the very best places to be, and wading birds have concentrated round them. Each bird strikes at the fish with its own deadly tactic. The reddish egret looks a real ditherer, but the use of a variety of tactics is in itself an effective fishing technique. Success. The rare and strange woodstock sticks to one tried and tested method, working by feel and taking care to stay out of range of the pond owner. It prods with its toes and rakes the murk with its bill open. The shadow from its wing cuts out surface glare and gives it a better view. When it's found its prey, the woodstock's big beak will shut as fast as a mousetrap. The land has now dried out so much that deer can go almost anywhere. Butterflies drink nectar from flowers in bloom round alligator holes. If drought comes, their brief lives will be even briefer. They must breed quickly. Male zebra butterflies emerge a few days before the females, who are still sleeping beauties inside their cocoons. Impatient suitors are already in line. As she emerges, a female barely has time to draw her first breath before the impatient males pounce. And before she's even had a chance to show off her splendid wings, she has a male mating with her. Such is the urgency of their situation that sometimes males don't even wait for females to emerge. One of these males, clinging to a sealed cocoon, has actually punctured it with his abdomen to mate with the female inside. In the trees, a male anole courts a female with his colourful throat flap. Anoles also use flaps to threaten, but that hasn't worked here. Like tiny dragons, two males do battle for sex and territory. The birds are now setting up home round the alligator holes. This is the best territory in town, because it's right over the alligator's fish restaurant, where helpings can be very generous. The amount of water in the pools is critical. If there's too much, the fish don't go into them. And if there's too little, they die. And so do the young chicks. Now it's just right. And this is good news for the wading birds. But there can be the very devil to pay for living here. A reptilian landlord lies patiently in his pool, waiting to collect the rent. If it has the bad luck to fall, an egret chick might help pay for the pool's upkeep. The important thing is always to mind where you put your feet. It's a good breeding year so far, and the high-rise apartments are full of growing families, eagerly swallowing endless amounts of fresh fish. But the landlord is now in family mood himself. He's displaying for a mate. Alligators bellow by vibrating air in their throats. The sound can travel up to a kilometre. The vibrations are so strong, they make the water dance. More than just a signal, they're a sexual stimulus. Alligators don't go in much for intimacy. It's usually only when they court that one will allow another to come close. Courtship itself is much quieter than the run-up to it. A quarter of a ton of toothy, scaly lava. The pair will sink below the surface to mate. Now the dry season is really gripping. Marooned in a sea of dead grass, the alligator pools are almost the only signs of life. At midday, the late spring sun is scorching. Dried to a crisp, lichens, grasses and leaves are a powder keg waiting to blow. Clouds, not of rain, but smoke, whipped high by strong winds. The fire alarm has sounded for the animals of the Everglades. It's a race from the burning hell around them. Fires are a regular Everglades fact of life. Sparked by lightning, they can destroy the vegetation over large areas, sometimes burning for weeks. Many animals can flee. Some don't have the option. At this time of year, the Everglades pine lands are so dry they're regularly torched by fires. But this does not bother the pines. Their scaly bark protects them, and they regenerate quickly. Young hardwood saplings, though, are destroyed, which leaves more living space for young pines. Fires also burn off dead growth everywhere, giving seedlings and new plants a chance. Fires may be killers, but there are always animals that manage to cheat death. Fires are so vital to the way this wilderness operates that they're now deliberately started under Everglades management. If sun and fire can turn the Everglades into a parched hell, so can humans. Irrigation and demand for drinking water routinely starve the wilderness of its ancient natural water supply. Thousands of acres that was once sawgrass is now under sugarcane, sucking millions of gallons of water from the Everglades. Each day, 1,000 people pour into Florida to live, and daily water consumption goes up by around 200,000 gallons. Canals direct precious water away from the Everglades and block its overland flow into them. But the government is now spending billions of dollars trying to manage water so that this wilderness does not die of thirst. The canals are also the highways that exotic plants and fish have used to colonize Everglades waters, and their presence upsets the natural balance. One species has entered these corridors from nearby fish farms flooded by storms and hurricanes. African tilapia have found perfect living conditions here and have been highly successful colonizers because of the way they breed. This is ideal tilapia real estate, and this bachelor is arranging his honeymoon suite, a metre wide and half-metre deep trench that he's dug almost entirely by mouth. Now all he needs is a suitable partner he can invite home. This is where the nursery will be, and it has to be absolutely immaculate. Next door, there's another male. Male tilapia use leks, communal grounds where they parade and display for females, who like to shop around for the best on offer. Protecting a good nest site is a serious matter, and the males fling themselves into the fray, mouthing threats. A dashing style on the battlefield and tidy housework have won him his partner. The female lays her eggs on the sand. And then she appears to swallow them. But in fact, she holds them in her mouth, where the male fertilizes them, and she keeps them well aerated here while they incubate. She's now on a self-imposed fast. After 8 days, the eggs have hatched. Hundreds of tiny fry make a break for freedom. Keeping them hidden away until they've hatched has meant many more have survived. The shallows of the Everglades have now dried to dust in the sun. The alligator holes are now precious oases, kept from silting up because the alligators scrape out mud and debris. Flocks of birds wade in, knowing the fish will make a last stand here, as they've nowhere else to go. fishing spider straddles the surface, feeling for the movements of prey with its front legs. There's no longer anywhere to run. By now, the largemouth bass have worked their way through the small fish course. Crayfish comes next, but there's several inches of spiky defense to get past. In between meals, the bass go to the cleaners. Bluegill sunfish offer a valet service, cleaning up irritating parasites and making a meal of them. The strange ancient bowfin is one of a kind in this crowd. Sole survivor of a long-extinct family, it has a lung-like gas bladder that can extract the very last ounce of oxygen from tepid water. The pool atmosphere is suffocating. Too many diners, too little air. Now the alligator prepares to strike. It's time to present the bill for the dry season feast, the year's biggest and best. The alligator's pool maintenance work is paying off. Only a few weeks ago, this was the cormorant's deep water pool. Now, white ibis pick off fish that struggle in just a few centimeters of water. Whirligigs dance round another victim. Anything that can eat fish is enjoying an abundance of easy meals. It has not rained for many weeks, and the sun is merciless. Life in the swamps is now becoming truly hellish. In the cracked, parched ground, only small waterholes offer any sanctuary, and even they are drying fast. Drought respects no one. Vultures pick at a shriveled alligator, which died when its waterhole finally gave out. Just when it seems life can take no more, things begin to change. In only a matter of days, the land is covered again by a film of water. The wet season has started. The pools are revitalized. Water levels are back to normal. And almost miraculously, life returns. Baby turtles break free at the touch of rain. And the Everglades Frog Orchestra strikes up for a celebratory concert. A new breeding season is here. The mosquito fish population will soon be boosted with the arrival of tiny youngsters, immediately able to look after themselves. That any fish could survive the deadly onslaught of drought and predators is astonishing. But some, like the walking catfish, rode out the devastation in the tiniest of pools. Even so, the rains must have come in the nick of time. Walking catfish, foreigners like the tilapia, crawl overland on their fins to find new pools to breed in. Wet weather makes their onward colonizing march easier. There's now little to show that the Everglades has just been through the hell of drought. Flushed a healthy and lush green, it's become a paradise for its extraordinarily resilient wildlife. This is one of the last great wildernesses of North America. That it's still here, squeezed by growing cities and farms, and periodically devastated by the elements, sometimes seems little short of miraculous.